Hey, welcome back to Three Chords and the Truth. We're the weekly local music podcast where we talk to local musicians about who they are, what they do, why they do it, and how they got to where they are today. I'm your host, Pete Kramer. Alongside of me is Christian Dreschel at Master Control. Don't forget to join and subscribe to our YouTube and our Facebook pages. The YouTube page, you can find past episodes of folks that we've had on over the last 4 seasons. And as well as, your favorite artists. Look up, what the shows that we did with them. YouTube or the Facebook page is where you can find Jim Cadrina's weekly list of who's playing where that weekend. Can't forget my friends Bev and Lynn over at Special Spaces, and Peggy in Boca Raton also does. They do great work for kids with cancer by redoing their bedrooms for them. My band, the Eastwood Project, you can find all of our new stuff at eastwoodprojectmusic.com. And we did have a few technical gremlins that, got us going a little bit late this evening. So we apologize for that. But without any further ado, I want to bring in my buddy. Again, we had so many problems with this. I apologize for that. But Dave Buffamonti, glad to have you with us, Dave. Sorry about the...
Glad to be here. I'm stuck in the 80s, not really technically inclined. So here we are.
Hey, you know what happens. Now, this is the first time. Typically, we've had musicians and whatnot on the show and stuff like that, but we've never had a booking agent before. Now, I assume you own Backstage Productions?
Correct. Started it way back in the day, yes.
So you've been doing it since, would you just tell me, 1979, right?
1979, yes, and still doing it for some reason.
Now, how have things changed over the years? Because I remember like going out in like the mid 70s. You go to bars and stuff like that. You pay $1 to get in the door and stuff. You had bands all over the town and stuff like that. What have you seen that's changed over the years?
One of the biggest things I remember changing the whole scene was, I don't recall what year it is, but when the drinking age went from 18 to 19, I was actually in a bar in Olean with a band I worked with back then called the Bees. And when the clock struck midnight, the Olean police, it was a place called the Wooden Nickel. Probably some people might remember that played there that might be watching this, but it was called the Wooden Nickel. The police actually came in at midnight. They started IDing everybody. And when they ID'd people and saw they weren't 19, they kicked probably half of the bar out. And at that point, we saw the audience cut in half. And so from 18 to 19, it took a big cut out of people that would come out to support live music. And then if you remember a few years later, it went from 19 to 21. And that really took a big bite out of things.
Yeah, that was a big deal. What was that, like 1980? Somewhere around there?
Early 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. How many bands do you represent?
Under the Backstage umbrella of like the exclusive, probably it's somewhere around 7-8 bands. And then there's a whole list of what I call the secondary list that I use quite a bit, the non-exclusive list. If, like, say a bar A calls me for a band and they're not open and nobody on my regular list is available, then I'll go to my secondary list, which I definitely do quite a bit. And a lot of times those bands aren't available either. Then maybe I'll put a post up on Facebook, say, hey, pick a date, January 26th available. Who's out there? Then they respond to me, and then I try to offer to the bar to fulfill what they need. So, but about 8 bands right now under my wing.
Okay. Well, that's another question now. So who's your customer? Is it the bar or the bands or both?
Actually, both. I'm working for the bands, but at the same time, we want to work for the bar, because if you do them right, they're going to come back to you and, use your services again. And a lot of the bars, there's a number of bars we book exclusively as Backstage Productions, and then there's a bunch of just wide open independent, anybody could get into them if the bar owner is interested in whatever band that might be.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes, people have a hard time wrapping their head around that. I've gone to XYZ. I'm not going to mention any names. Their websites, they'll have posted all the bands that they represent. And, there was somebody recently, I forget who the heck it was, but they said that it was a local band that they went to one of these promoters and they said, well, we've already got too many Southern rock bands. We don't need another one.
Yeah, and the agency said that, or the bar said that?
No, it was the agency, yeah.
Right. Hey, a lot of times you don't want to oversaturate the same type of band and like you have 10 of a certain same kind of act, and then all of a sudden it just gets lost in the shuffle then. Although Buffalo is has a well number of classic rock bands, and that seems to be the majority of what's out there, that at least that's getting the work.
Now that's another funny thing too, because now like I've been in different markets and stuff like that where, and you're right. I mean, I'm totally agreeing with you about classic rock bands in Buffalo. That seems to be all there is.
I have always called them, they're user friendly, because you could be a country person walking into a classic rock bar and say, "Oh, I know that song, and they're okay with it." Or you could be a hard rock person and actually like the music you're hearing that night. So it seems like it probably plays to a wider variety. Like, say there's a hard rock band in there, and you're somebody that likes country, you're not going to like that night. But a classic rock band seems to be accepted by a wide variety of people.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, again, I was down in where the hell was I? I think it was Florida, and I remember walking into the Floribama, really cool bar. Half of the bar was it's in northern Florida, half of the bar was in Alabama, the other half was in Florida, right on the line. And I walked in there that one night, and there was this young girl sitting there singing her own original song, playing this beautiful white Fender guitar. And I asked the bartender, I said, "Yeah, original music in here." She says, "Are you kidding me?" He says, "We don't do covers. If you don't have original music, we throw your ass out."
Now, was there a turnout for that?
Place was packed.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a rarity.
Yeah. Well, it's a different
market here.
In this market, right? I'm talking to where I was down south, but apparently in the south it's prevalent, and I've heard that a lot. And but up here,
it depends what area you went to, because then again, say you go to Allen Street here or some place downtown, the original scene is more accepted. But if you go to the suburbs, it's not as accepted. So I guess it depends what area you go to as well.
That's why I brought it up. I wanted your opinion on that. Yeah, because I mean, you've got a finger on the pulse of things. I mean, I know a couple bars that I go to. Couple bars that I play at, you go to a lot more places and know a lot more places than what I would know.
Mm-hmm. I would again, the original scene, it's definitely a specialized market, and I've seen it work more, like I say, downtown. I've tried it in the suburbs a few times at different places, and it just never really seemed to take off. You get the one or two good nights, but then there's the nights that it's just like the bar will say it's not worth having the doors open, because then when you get 10-15 people, by the time they're paying their staff and everything else, and if they have in-house sound and lights, the cost of that, you don't even recoup your money. So it definitely has its market, and it seems like, I don't know why it's this way, but it seems like the followers of the original bands, they're used to going downtown. They don't really venture out to the suburbs, which I find that even a little surprising, because a lot of those places have the free parking and everything else easy.
Yeah.
You're parking in the lot to walk in the door instead of parking like 3 blocks down Chippewa, say, to walk in, or Franklin, or any of the Allen Street or anything like that.
Right.
So it seems like it's simpler, but it's definitely more a specialized area downtown from what I've seen.
So when you let's say, like I asked you before about who's your client, is it the bar or the band? Do you contractually sign either or how does that work?
No, actually, in the old days, everything seemed to be by contract. The bands I represent, we used to do everybody by contract, and this is going back years ago, but I've always said this to a band. When a band approaches me, and we don't take on too many new bands just because there's not a lot of work out there. So the bands we represent, we want to try to do the job for them, and make sure they're happy with the work that I could get them. But nowadays, they ask, is there a contract involved? And to be honest with you, I don't know what other agencies do with this, but my thing is, I don't do a contract, and I'll tell you why. Say for some reason band B is just not happy, they're just not going right, I'll say, and they're looking then to do their own thing, branch out and go their own way.
Yeah.
If they're under contract and I'm trying to hold a gun to their head, the worst thing you can do, then they're out on the street saying, we're really not happy, but we're stuck in this contract with Backstage. We don't want to be here, but we're here. So you know what? I'd rather then somebody does go their own way instead they're on the street for a year not happy. You know what I mean? So, and with that being said, though, I'll say the bands I have under my agency, they've pretty much been there year after year after year. So hopefully we're doing something right.
Well, and it's a cool thing I like about doing business with you. And I say this for anybody that doesn't know Dave. You got me a couple jobs just on Facebook Messenger, We never
Right.
met. We never shook hands. You know, it was just maybe we're just old school.
Yeah.
That could be where everybody trusts everybody. But, you know, we never had a problem with anything like that. And that's why
Right.
I just wondered how that really worked out. Because so if you don't do a physical contract, let's just say that you go to ABC bar and they said, yo, yeah, you know what, Dave, you bring us in whoever you think is going to be good for our place. Let's say XYZ band comes in and says, Dave, can I play there? How does that work? Do you only represent the band? And I'm asking this out of pure naivety because I really don't know. And I'm not trying to piss anybody off by any means, you know.
That's easy to do. Don't worry about that.
No, but can XYZ band come in even though you thought that there was somebody else that was better? I mean,
put it this way: if it's a bar I'm booking exclusive, then I need to branch outside of the exclusive bands I have. And first of all, I'll ask the bar, what are you looking for? Are you looking for the classic rock stuff? Are you looking for tributes? Are you looking for hard rock? Are you looking for country? What is your format you're looking for? And then you try, and depending again, what area is it? A Northtown, Southtowns? Say it's a Northtowns bar. Maybe I'm familiar with a few Northtown bands that I'm not working with on a day in, day out basis, but I know of them. And, you know, just by doing this for way too long, you get to know these people and you say like, hey, I know this band could work in the Northtown. So I approach them and say, hey, I'm working at such and such a bar. I have a few dates open there. Would you like to play there? And then I take the same approach, offer it to the club owner, and say, look, this is a local band from your neck of the woods. They should do well there. And, you know, obviously not every date works out. If it did, I'd make $1 million. But, you know, hopefully you have more winners than losers, and the bars trust you that way. And the bands are happy getting the work just because whatever reason they weren't already in there. But if it, like I said, if it's an exclusive place I deal with, well, then they'd be dealing with through me anyway. So the independent bars are a little more tricky. Exclusive are way more easier for me to work with for the reason I can branch out freely to the independents and know that a return date is going to come back through, filter through my agency, and not, you know, somebody try to go behind your back, you know, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty amazing that you've been doing this for, you know, over 40 years, right?
And about 15 years ago, I started saying, this was probably my last year. This is probably my last year. But to this day, I probably said it. But then it gets to this time of the year, the calendars come out for next year. Bars start calling you for the next year. All of a sudden, I notice I'm filling in a few dates for the next year. I'm like, geez, I guess I'm in the next year already. So I'm still doing this. So that's where I'm at.
Well, now you were in the glory days back in the 70s, right?
My God, what a difference. Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing difference, man.
Night and day. It's new bands that are out nowadays. I wish they could have experienced that, because what's considered a good crowd now, in those days, the owners would have wanted to hang themselves, you know. You know, back then, a band, and I'll name some names, like I had Rock Candy back then. I had Striders, just so many. Paul Pope Band, Harpo that came in from out of town. You know, Widow was one of my strong bands, and I know you had Lana on that. You know, they're evolved out of that. But back then, bands would have a following. Like a bar would say, "How do they do?" And you could say they're going to have 150 or 200 of their own people there. Yep. And now, if a band says, you know, we've got about 25, 30 people that'll follow us, the bar's actually happy with that. But back then, that would have been like, no way in heck am I going to use it. Yeah. So that's one thing that changed drastically. The expectations have definitely changed.
I'll tell you a secret that I probably have never said to anybody before, but I remember being at the Barrelhead one time.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, that place was always packed.
It was. And you know what? To interrupt you, weekdays were just as busy as weekends.
Yeah. And they always had bands. The bands always got paid well. The place seemed to make money. But I remember going in there the one time, and it was like you couldn't get through the crowd. I had a pitcher of beer in my hand. I literally spilled a little beer on the person in front of me to get them to move, just because they just weren't getting the hell out of the way. But yeah, I mean, you would cram so many people into a small spot like that. And like you just said, now you get 25, 30 people. They're happy about that.
And they're saying, oh, we're having a good night. You know? So, I mean, in the old days, too, a Monday night was real popular somewhere. A Tuesday, there was every day of the week was somewhere that was the hot spot, and you knew it would be busy. Yep. Right now, bars are struggling to say, like, you know, we hope we get a good crowd on a weekend, let alone what can we do on a weeknight? Because weeknights are almost non-existent, you know. Well, and one thing that has changed that way, too, is liquor laws and like SLA and ladies' nights. Back then, ladies used to drink for free, if you remember. And people would say, well, how could a bar do that? Well, you know what? They had 200 girls in there drinking for free, but there's 300 guys there that's spending the money like crazy. So
because the girls were drinking.
Exactly.
I mean, it was just the whole.
So it'd be a super busy night. But now a bar is not allowed to discount anything more than 50%. So so to do a ladies' night, I have it plugged in. So to do a ladies' night, that's almost non-existent. The best thing you could do now is 50% off your normal prices.
Yeah. Things have changed, and it's like any other business. And I'm not going into, because you and I share the same type of political beliefs, but regulations always get in the way of things. And it just used to be simpler. But anyway, like
anybody that's on my Facebook page knows my political
I know. And again,
and I'm trying to make rock great again. Let's just say that.
I have no idea what you meant by that, man.
I don't know.
But no, again, when we were when I had Lana on a couple of weeks ago, and tell that story about the band, because I found that very interesting. I didn't realize that you were that involved with that.
Geez, what happened with that is the whole thing back in the day. I wanted to get a all-female band going, and I think there was a magazine called View Magazine. Do you remember that by any chance?
No.
It wasn't Nightlife. It was View Magazine. Took an ad out in View Magazine saying looking for female musicians. That's when a band called Vixen was real popular. Heart, but even that they weren't all female, but female orientated. I said, there's got to be a market for this. So I put together an all-female band after searching and searching and searching. I mean, that took a long time to find. The only thing that wasn't female in the band was the drummer. I couldn't find a female drummer at the time, but it was 4 females up front and the male drummers. But the band was called Widow, and we, after massive rehearsals and auditions and everything, we found a lineup, put it together, and it did amazing. Then when that band, one by one though, when a band member quit, it was tough to find maybe another female guitar player or another female bassist or keyboardist. So eventually it evolved into where it became just a female lead singer and then a male band. But then Widow branched off into Black Widow as the singer, which I know very well. Moved to California, and then a new female singer came in, and Donna was the singer in Widow, and she said, well, do me one favor, just don't call the band Widow. I said, no problem. So we called it Black Widow. So she wasn't too happy about that, but every life moves on. So out of Black Widow, then the guitar player ended up eventually branching out of that band and got a band called Widowmaker. So Widowmaker came out of Widow, Black Widow came out of Widow, and Black Widow is still going strong.
And all that came out of you.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this is decades later, and it's still going. So I give her a lot of credit. She's doing a great job with it. And whatever reason, they seem to take off in Pennsylvania. They don't do a lot of dates around Western New York, but I've used them. I've used them at Rock Roll Heaven. I've used them at the Cowboy on the Lake and a few places locally. And so I like to bring the band back to this area because they are from here,
Yeah.
But for them, they make their more money from what I understand out of town. So they go, they don't mind traveling, and they get a lot of work in Pennsylvania.
It's like we talked about before, different markets. I mean, different people like different things, and
Well, even when things were really good back in, say, the 80s and 90s, I notice if I travel out of town with a band to one of these out of town little bars, the people out there are just like, what it is? Those little towns seem to have one major place they go to, and that's the hot spot, and they just get wild and crazy there. Like here, people are more spoiled, and it's a tougher crowd. It's tougher to please them because there's a lot of talent here in Buffalo, and a lot of bands don't like to travel, especially now. They don't like to travel out of Buffalo. So to impress the people, it takes a lot.
Yeah.
But you go to some little town in Pennsylvania or even New York State, you go out to, I don't know, smaller towns, they're not as, they don't see as much talent. So they're easier, they get into it more.
Yeah, they're easier to please, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I'm not trying to say that in a derogatory way.
It could sound derogatory, so I didn't mean it that way.
No, and I hope nobody took it that way. But no, I get it. I mean, there's friends of mine. They go to this one place way deep into Niagara County that it's like really, you're driving way the hell out there. But
I
they're
have.
like, there's
Can I
no,
say a name or not?
you can say whatever name.
Niagara County. There's a few bars out there. The Chop Shop. Is that it by any? I don't know. Like that. That's something. And Alcott has a few places.
I want to say it's in Alcott. I'm not. Honestly, I don't know the name of the bar, but
Right. Okay.
It's one of those things like you were just saying. It's like there's no place else around, so
There's no
everybody goes there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
But then again, for them, I mean, for the bar, there's less people to draw from too, because not as many people. Buffalo's obviously more populated with all the surrounding areas. So it's a catch-22. There's the pluses and minuses of both.
No, I get it. Well, and anyway, I hate to cut this short, but we started late, and when we start the new season after the Super Bowl, I'd love to have you come back on, and we can have a longer conversation. Because,
and I'd love to tell you how the Bills won that Super Bowl and how we did. Just one before I die, right?
No, I'm with you, man. No, it's cool because I think, like I said, we usually just have musicians on, but you're so involved with getting the musicians work as well as the people that pay the musicians.
Right.
And, that intermediary type thing. And especially since the fact that you've been doing it for 45 years, I think that is just an amazing thing, especially in a market like Buffalo, man.
And I'm only 50 years old. That's crazy.
There you go. Well, anyway, thanks again, Dave. We really appreciate it. Next week, we got my friends from the Dakota Brothers are going to be on, and those guys are all crazy.
I've used them out at Soleil during the summer. Yeah,
you know Alex and the boys, man.
Yep.
They're nuts. You get that Colin going, he's just a crazy son of a bitch. But
awesome.
Anyway, Dave, thanks. I'll speak with you after the show if that's cool with you. And
definitely.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in to 3 Chords and the Truth. I'm Pete Kramer, and support local music. Very important. Thank you.